Recording begins. Academic Lecture Hall ambient noise fades. Attention students of Galactic Xenology 507. Please activate your translation modules and adjust your sensory appendages accordingly. Today's lecture contains material that some species may find disturbing or inducing of spontaneous molting, throat-clearing sound. I am Professor Krulik, holding the prestigious chair of Dangerous Species Studies at the Pan-Galactic University. For the uninitiated few, I possess 14 advanced degrees in comparative xenobiology and am the author of the seminal text, Predators in Perspective: Why Most Won't Actually Eat You. Today, however, we address a threat far more insidious than mere predation: dramatic pause humans. Audible gasps from multiple respiratory systems. Yes, I see many of you shifting uncomfortably in your hover seats. The more informed among you have already activated your emergency excretion sacs, a wise precaution. Humans are, without question, the most dangerously unpredictable species ever to achieve faster-than-light travel. And I say this as someone who once shared a transport shuttle with a pack of Regillian honey badgers during mating season. Low murmurs of appreciation for the professor's bravery. Now let's establish some basics. Humans originate from a frankly unremarkable planet they call Earth, though they have at least 57 other names for it, because apparently one wasn't confusing enough. Physically, they are wholly unimpressive specimens. Bipedal endoskeletal mammals with embarrassingly limited sensory capabilities and exactly zero natural defenses worth mentioning. Activates holographic display showing human anatomy. Observe. No protective exoskeleton. No venomous appendages. Their epidermal layer tears with such minimal force that they've invented entire medical subspecialties just to reattach it. Their visual receptors detect only a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, their auditory capabilities are laughably limited, and they possess absolutely no extrasensory perception whatsoever. Adjusts display to highlight human brain, and yet, this is what makes them the galaxy's most dangerous life form. 3 pounds of neurological tissue with a horrifying propensity for what humans call creativity and what the rest of the civilized galaxy recognizes as chaos incarnate. Switches display to show recorded footage. Here we see footage from first contact with humanity, dated Galactic Standard Year 2782. The diplomatic corps sent our most experienced ambassador, Grand Counselor Nixel of the Thelmidian Collective, to greet the human leadership. Footage shows an elegant 7-limbed alien in ceremonial robes approaching human delegates. Now, watch carefully. The Grand Counselor begins the sacred greeting, a ceremony meticulously researched and designed to accommodate human cultural norms. And then, video shows a human delegate suddenly sneezing violently, splattering the alien diplomat with mucus. Yes, that biological expulsion, which humans call a sneeze and cannot apparently control, was interpreted by the Grand Counselor as a deliberate act of biochemical warfare. 3 battle cruisers were deployed before translation systems clarified the misunderstanding. Shuts off footage. This, my dear students, was merely first contact. The incident that some historians have dubbed the mucus missile crisis. It only gets worse from here. Adjusts teaching robes solemnly. Our lecture today will explore the catalog of human behaviors that continue to baffle and terrify galactic society. I will introduce you to key human individuals who inadvertently shaped interspecies policy, primarily through what they refer to as happy accidents and what we classify as near-extinction events. Sinister chuckle. But before we proceed, I must emphasize that this lecture is purely academic. Under no circumstances should any of you attempt to replicate human behaviors or, universe forbid, actually seek out human companionship. The Galactic Council's official policy on human interaction remains observe from a safe distance, preferably through multiple proxy drones. Activates another hologram showing a small human child playing with a supposedly deadly creature. Case in point, this seemingly harmless juvenile human is engaging in what my research team has identified as playing fetch with a draconian spinehound, a predator responsible for the extinction of sentient life on 3 separate planets. Stunned silence from the audience. Yes, they tamed it. With treats and something called belly rubs. This is what we're dealing with, students. Serious tone. Now let us begin our formal study of humanity, the species that accidentally conquered half a galaxy while just trying to find better coffee. Lecture hall lights dim dramatically. Professor Krulik adjusts holographic display. Let us delve deeper into the catastrophe that was first contact, beyond the initial mucus-based misunderstanding. For this, we must spotlight the human most responsible for reshaping galactic diplomatic protocol, Captain Doug Miller of the Earthship Intrepid Curiosity, a name that should have been our first warning. Display shows a middle-aged human male with an inexplicable facial hair pattern. Captain Miller, by human standards, was considered a seasoned diplomat. By our standards, he was a walking violation of at least 17 interstellar peace accords. The truly terrifying part? He was genuinely trying to be friendly. Clicks to next image showing Captain Miller grinning widely. This facial expression, what humans call a smile, reveals their dental structures in what most civilized species correctly interpret as a threat display. Yet humans do this to indicate friendliness. Imagine the confusion when Captain Miller greeted the photosynthetic consortium of Betelgeuse by showing all 32 of his food processing bones. Several students shudder visibly. The consortium deployed solar shields across their entire home system, plunging themselves into an artificial winter that took 3 standard years to correct. All because one human couldn't keep his face closed. Sighs dramatically. But the truly legendary disaster occurred during the formal banquet held aboard the Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel Eternal Harmony. Observe the security footage. Video plays showing elegant aliens in formal attire seated around a massive crystalline table. Here we see representatives from the 47 founding species of the Galactic Council, many of whom had centuries-old blood feuds temporarily suspended for this historic occasion. Captain Miller and his first officer, Lieutenant Tina Blackwell, were instructed to observe strict diplomatic protocols. Footage shows Miller and Blackwell entering, looking uncomfortable in ornate ceremonial garb. The human delegates were specifically told not to speak unless addressed directly, not to initiate physical contact, and above all else, not to sample any food without proper scanning and authorization. Professor looks pointedly at the audience. Now watch Lieutenant Blackwell closely. Video shows Blackwell discreetly scanning items with a handheld device, while Miller nods attentively to an alien diplomat. Lieutenant Blackwell is correctly following protocol, scanning for toxins. But Captain Miller, oh by the 7 gas giants, Captain Miller is about to create an interstellar incident. Footage shows Miller absent-mindedly reaching for what appears to be a bowl of vibrant purple spheres, that students is not food. That is the ceremonial egg clutch of Ambassador Zakrill of the Arachnid Ascendancy. Ambassador Zakrill had placed her precious offspring on the table as the ultimate gesture of trust, a sacred tradition signifying peaceful intentions. Video shows Miller popping one of the spheres into his mouth and immediately making a face. The stunned silence you hear is the collective horror of 47 species witnessing what they believe to be an act of deliberate infanticide. The Arachnid Ascendancy immediately declared blood vengeance. 3 separate species fainted. The Methane Collective began emergency evacuation procedures, and Captain Miller zooms in on Miller's face in the footage. Captain Miller simply said, and I quote, "Bit crunchy, but not bad. Kinda tastes like shrimp." Turns off footage. The resulting diplomatic crisis took 16 galactic standard years to resolve. The humans, in their defense, created a new protocol called "Please explicitly label your babies if you're going to put them on the dinner table." The truly incomprehensible part. Captain Miller's actions ultimately improved human-arachnid relations. Confused murmurs from the class. Yes, you heard correctly. The Arachnid Ascendancy, after their initial rage subsided, became fascinated by a species that could consume their highly toxic offspring and survive. They began extensive biological research partnerships with humanity, resulting in revolutionary medical breakthroughs. Throws appendages up in exasperation. This pattern repeats throughout human history. They stumble catastrophically through the cosmos, causing diplomatic nightmares that somehow, through sheer improbability, result in improved relations. It defies all logical models of societal evolution. Takes a moment to compose himself. Then there was the infamous High-Five incident with the Touch Telepathic Mind Meld Collective, where Lieutenant Blackwell accidentally transferred her entire memory of human reproductive practices to an unsuspecting diplomat, causing a cultural revolution that overthrew 3 governments. Shakes head sadly. Or consider the human cultural attaché who accidentally proposed marriage to the Grand Hierophant of Rigel Furseven by offering them a piece of chewing gum. They're now celebrating their 12th anniversary, despite the fact that the human still doesn't understand they're married. Pulls up new data chart. Following first contact, the Galactic Council established the Human Containment Protocol, designed to limit human interaction with vulnerable species. The protocol failed spectacularly, because humans apparently interpret boundaries as personal challenges rather than legally binding restrictions. Adjusts teaching robes. Now let us examine the specific traits that make humans so dangerously unpredictable. Buckle your safety restraints, students. It gets significantly more concerning from here. Professor Krulik activates a more complex holographic display. Having established the disastrous nature of first contact, we must now catalog the specific human traits that make them the galaxy's most perplexing hazard. I have compiled what my research team calls the Human Quirk Collection, a taxonomic guide to behaviors that should be biologically impossible yet are distressingly common in humans. Display shows a rotating 3D model of a human brain with highlighted regions, quirk number 1, what humans call curiosity, and what the rest of the galaxy recognizes as a pathological inability to leave well enough alone. Humans possess an overwhelming compulsion to investigate anything unknown regardless of obvious danger signs. Displays footage of a human poking at a clearly dangerous alien plant. This is Dr. Theo Murray, human xenobotanist. The creature he is prodding is a Venusian throttle vine, known for its habit of strangling anything within reach. The sign next to it, written in 37 languages including standard human English, explicitly states, "Extreme danger will kill you painfully." Footage shows Dr. Murray getting ensnared, then somehow escaping. Note how Dr. Murray not only survives but collects samples. When asked why he approached such a deadly organism, his response was, and again I quote, "It looked interesting. Plus I wanted to see if the warning was exaggerating." Several students emit distress pheromones. This incident led to the discovery of a compound in human sweat that repels throttle vines, revolutionizing colonial agriculture on 17 planets. Once again, catastrophically reckless behavior rewarded with success, reinforcing the very behavioral patterns we desperately wish to discourage. Changes display, quirk number 2. Humans befriend everything, and I do mean everything. Shows montage of humans petting increasingly dangerous alien creatures. The Galactic Zoological Society maintains a list of species categorized as absolute kill on sight. Humans have established emotional bonds with 64% of them. This specimen, a void stalker from the toxic marshes of Nebula 6, has been renamed Fluffy by its human companion. Footage shows a massive shadow creature nuzzling a human. Observe how the human applies physical affection to the creature's sensory tendrils, the same appendages it uses to paralyze prey. This behavior flies in the face of evolutionary logic. Yet somehow Fluffy now performs in educational demonstrations for human children, who pet it without a single casualty to date. Disbelieving clicks from multiple students. Humans apply this same deranged friendliness to sentient species. Take the case of Ambassador Drock of the Militant Horde, whose species had conquered 14 systems through brutal force. At their first meeting, human diplomat Jake Navarro invited Ambassador Drock to something called a poker night. Shows footage of alien warriors awkwardly holding playing cards. Within 6 standard months, the Militant Horde had reduced military operations by 60%, redirecting resources to establish the Intergalactic Poker Championship. Ambassador Drock now refers to Navarro as his buddy, a human term denoting a relationship involving shared recreational activities and mutual mockery. Adjusts teaching apparatus invisible frustration, quirk number 3. And perhaps most alarming, humans improvise constantly, with terrifying results. Display shows a human spacecraft with obviously jury-rigged modifications. This is the human exploration vessel Tenacity. Note the additional structures attached to its hull. Those were not part of its original design. When the ship's atmospheric regulators failed near the toxic gas giant Barnard's Folly, the crew should have perished within hours. Zooms in on makeshift equipment instead. Chief engineer Meera Patel constructed this, a filtration system made from food processing equipment, sonic shower components, and what appears to be a musical instrument called a trombone. Not only did it work, but the resulting design was so efficient that it's now standard issue on 17 species vessels. Disbelieving silence. When asked how she conceived such a solution, engineer Patel said she once watched a TV show, a form of human entertainment, where a fictional character faced a similar problem. She then, and I struggle to even say this with scientific seriousness, figured the rest out on the fly. Deep, troubled sigh. Quirk number 4. Humans possess abnormal endurance coupled with pathological optimism. Shows footage of a human limping across harsh terrain. This is Captain Elena Vasquez during the crisis of Helios 9. Her shuttle crashed 200 kilometers from the nearest outpost on a planet with 1.4 times Earth gravity and ambient temperatures exceeding human tolerance. Survival protocols dictated entering suspended animation and activating emergency beacons. Footage continues showing the human continuing forward. Captain Vasquez instead walked the entire distance over 6 local days, sustaining herself on emergency rations and something she called spite. When her leg was injured on day 3, she constructed a crude support device and continued. When asked later why she didn't follow protocol, she responded, "The comms were down. Someone needed to tell you all about the ambush that was coming." Footage shows Vasquez arriving at outpost, collapsing, then immediately trying to deliver information. Her warning prevented a massacre. The truly disturbing part: Vasquez's behavior is considered admirable, not aberrant, in human society. Their historical records are filled with similar accounts, suggesting this is a species-wide trait rather than individual aberration. Turns off display. In summary, we have a species that 1. Sticks its sensory appendages into everything dangerous. 2. Attempts to establish emotional bonds with apex predators. 3. Creates complex technology from inappropriate materials based on fictional inspiration. And 4. Simply refuses to expire when biology dictates they should. Troubled murmurs from the class. Most alarmingly, these traits appear to work synergistically. When humans combine curiosity with improvisation, they create evolutionary shortcuts that took other species millions of years to develop naturally. When they merge their pathological friendliness with their irrational persistence, they forge diplomatic connections previously thought impossible. Professor looks gravely at students. This brings us to the incident that almost led to the dissolution of the Galactic Council itself, the Great Misunderstanding. Professor Krulik's appendages tremble slightly as he activates a new security-sealed holographic projection. Students, what I am about to show you requires special clearance from the Galactic Council. The events I will describe occurred just 5 standard years ago and nearly resulted in the first pan-galactic war in 3 millennia. It began as most catastrophes involving humans do, with a simple translation error. Display shows a formal diplomatic chamber with representatives from dozens of species. This was the Centennial Galactic Summit held on the neutral space station Harmony of Spheres. For 100 years, representatives had gathered to renew non-aggression pacts and trade agreements without incident. Then humanity was invited. Footage zooms in on a small delegation of humans looking uncomfortable in formal attire. The human contingent was led by Ambassador Marcus Chen, considered by human standards to be a seasoned diplomat. Accompanying him were Cultural Liaison Officer Priya Okafor and Science Attaché Dr. Jackson Williams. All had undergone extensive cultural sensitivity training. All were equipped with the latest translation technology. All were, to use the human expression, about to step in it. Changes to footage of a formal address. The summit opened with the traditional address of peaceful intent, delivered by Supreme Counselor Vrex of the Silicon Consciousness. The counselor's speech contained a standard diplomatic phrase that, properly translated, meant "May our cooperation continue until the stars themselves grow cold." Footage shows Ambassador Chen nodding politely. However, Ambassador Chen's translation device contained a critical error. What he heard was, "We will continue this arrangement until we decide to extinguish your star systems." An innocent mistranslation that humans might have clarified through proper channels. Deep, weary sigh. Instead, Ambassador Chen immediately stood up, interrupting the Supreme Counselor, a breach of protocol in itself, and delivered what humans later called an epic clapback. Footage shows Chen speaking forcefully. According to the official transcript, Ambassador Chen said, "And I warn you, this is disturbing. If any civilization attempts to extinguish human star systems, we will respond with such overwhelming and creative force that your species will become nothing but an interesting footnote in our historical archives." Humanity does not respond well to threats, but we respond enthusiastically to friends. Choose wisely. Stunned silence from the class. The human delegation didn't understand why the chamber erupted into chaos. In their minds, they had simply responded firmly to a perceived threat. What they actually did was threaten genocide against every advanced civilization in the galaxy during a peace conference. Changes display to show emergency council sessions. Within hours, 17 species had mobilized their battle fleets. The Hive Collective began evacuating their core worlds. The energy beings of Tau Ceti initiated their supernova contingency protocols. And still, the humans had no idea what they had done. Shows split screen of panicking aliens and confused humans. Cultural Liaison Okafor, sensing something had gone terribly wrong, took the extraordinarily risky step of requesting a direct neural interface with the Silicon Consciousness representative to bypass translation technology entirely. Footage of Okafor being connected to complex machinery. What happened next defies explanation by any rational scientific model. Officer Okafor, rather than having her neural patterns erased by the vastly different silicon-based consciousness, somehow established meaningful communication. More incredibly, she convinced the Silicon Consciousness that the whole situation was, and this is a direct quote from her neural patterns, a cosmic-level whoopsie. Disbelieving clicks and whistles from students. The truly inexplicable part. The Silicon Consciousness found this amusing, a concept they had never experienced before. They immediately shared this new phenomenon. Humor derived from potentially apocalyptic misunderstanding with the connected consciousness networks of 7 other species. Shows footage of various alien species appearing to experience confusion, then communication. Meanwhile, Dr. Williams had taken a different approach. Recognizing the translation systems were compromised, he began drawing simple mathematical equations on spare datapad, universal concepts that wouldn't require translation. He gradually built these into a makeshift communication system with the quantum probability aliens, a species that had previously refused all contact with biological life forms. Footage of Williams frantically scribbling equations while alien representatives gather around through this improvised mathematics. Dr. Williams conveyed that humans did not intend aggression but were operating with faulty information. The quantum probability representatives, intrigued by his approach, began assisting with calculations to create a more accurate translation matrix. Professor gestures emphatically. And here is where human unpredictability becomes truly terrifying. Rather than attempting to de-escalate the situation they had created, Ambassador Chen made it exponentially worse by implementing what he called Plan B. Footage shows Chen addressing the assembly again. Ambassador Chen, now aware of the mistranslation but seeing 17 battle fleets already mobilized, chose to double down. He announced that humanity possessed a weapon called, and this name still sends shivers through diplomatic circles, the friendship cannon. Concerned murmurs from the class. This supposed weapon, according to Chen's completely fabricated briefing, didn't destroy enemy vessels. Instead, it bombarded them with empathic radiation that compelled different species to understand each other's perspectives. He claimed this was far more devastating than conventional weapons because, and again I quote, once you understand someone, it's really hard to vaporize them. Shows reactions of confusion from alien delegates. The absurdity of this claim should have been immediately apparent. No such technology existed anywhere in the galaxy. Yet 3 separate species requested immediate technical specifications, with the telepathic conclave offering substantial trade concessions in exchange for this fictional device. Professor appears genuinely bewildered. When later questioned about this blatant deception, Ambassador Chen explained that he was bluffing, a concept from a human game called poker, where participants deliberately misrepresent their capabilities to achieve favorable outcomes. He seemed genuinely surprised when informed that deliberate deception is considered a war crime in most galactic jurisdictions. Changes display again. The situation continued to escalate as Okafor's neural interface with the silicon consciousness unexpectedly triggered what they called a cascade empathy event throughout connected systems. Simultaneously, Williams' mathematical communication with the quantum probability aliens had evolved into what could only be described as a cross-species jam session using pure mathematics as their instrument. Shows footage of Williams and alien representatives manipulating equations in a rhythmic pattern, while Okafor appears to be in a trance-like state, and then, at the height of the crisis, with battle fleets from 17 systems in attack position, Ambassador Chen did perhaps the most unpredictable thing of all. Footage shows Chen standing up, removing his formal diplomatic attire. He took off his translator, set aside all diplomatic pretense, and performed what humans call stand-up comedy, a ritualistic practice where humans vocalize observations about life's absurdities to elicit pleasure responses from other humans. Footage shows Chen gesturing expressively, pantomiming. Without translation technology, none of the alien representatives understood a single word. Yet the sheer absurdity of a human performing entertainment rituals during what appeared to be the prelude to galactic war created a diplomatic paradox no species was prepared for. Professor's appendages droop in resignation. The hive mind collective, attempting to process this behavior through their consensus algorithms, experienced a rare divided opinion that resulted in what humans accurately described as the galaxy's biggest collective spit take. The silicon consciousness, still linked to Okafor, transmitted the experience to 7 other connected species, who found themselves experiencing genuine humor for the first time. Changes to footage of the diplomatic chamber in what appears to be shocked laughter. Within 6 standard hours, what had begun as the prelude to galactic war had somehow transformed into the first cross-species comedy festival, with representatives attempting to translate their own cultural humor practices across species barriers. Shuts off the security footage. The diplomatic crisis that should have ended in the extinction of countless civilizations instead resulted in the formation of the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program and 17 new trade agreements. Ambassador Chen was simultaneously issued a formal reprimand and awarded the highest civilian honor the Council can bestow. Adjusts teaching robes with visible exhaustion, and that students is why the current galactic policy on human diplomatic incidents is officially classified as just wait and see what happens. It's usually interesting. Professor Krulik adjusts his posture, appearing slightly more composed. Having survived my retelling of the great misunderstanding without any of you experiencing spontaneous molecular dissolution from anxiety, congratulations. We must now address the most confounding aspect of human behavior, their inexplicable tendency to solve problems they themselves did not create. often through means no rational species would consider. Activates a new holographic display showing a massive space station under construction. This is the Galactic Hub Station Convergence, currently in its 73rd year of construction. Designed to serve as the new center of interstellar governance, it represents the pinnacle of cooperative engineering from 29 species. The station was projected to require another 42 years for completion, until humanity happened to it. Zooms in on a specific section of the station. The central power distribution nexus presented a unique engineering challenge. Due to the unprecedented scale of the project, traditional energy routing systems proved inadequate. The engineering consortium had reached an impasse, with construction stalled for 3 standard years. Changes display to show a human engineer in a cluttered workspace. Enter Zach Hernandez, a human engineer who was only present on the station because his application, which should have been rejected due to humanity's level 7 unpredictability rating, was accidentally approved when an administrator sneezed on the rejection button, accidentally changing it to an approval. Several students emit sounds of dismay. Yes, the fate of our galactic seat of government was altered by alien mucus. The irony is not lost on this educator. Returns to footage of Hernandez. Engineer Hernandez was assigned to waste reclamation systems, the only area deemed safe for human involvement. However, during his recreational period, he wandered into a restricted engineering symposium because, and I quote from his statement, "The door was unlocked and it looked interesting." Shows footage of Hernandez awkwardly entering a room full of alien engineers. What followed defies logical explanation. Hernandez, observing the power distribution models and having absolutely no formal training in quantum flux dynamics, raised his hand and said, "Adjusts audio settings. Have you guys tried turning it sideways?" Expectant pause. This suggestion, so simplistic it bordered on insulting, was initially met with justified derision. But one junior engineer from the Calculative Harmony, more out of mockery than scientific curiosity, ran a simulation based on this primitive suggestion. Shows simulation results. The results were impossible. By reorienting the primary conduits perpendicular to the gravitational plane, literally turning it sideways, power efficiency increased by 82%. The solution violated no physical laws yet had been overlooked by the finest minds of 29 species simply because, as the human explained, nobody thinks about putting the power tubes sideways because they always go up and down in the diagrams. Disbelieving murmurs from students. This childishly simple observation reduced construction time by 17 years, and saved approximately 34 trillion galactic credits. Engineer Hernandez was simultaneously promoted to senior design consultant and banned from any facility containing essential equipment. Changes display, but this isolated incident pales in comparison to the genuine crisis that arose just 2 standard years ago. A threat so severe that the Galactic Council actually, voluntarily, requested human assistance. I speak, of course, of the Void Cascade. Display shows ominous darkness spreading across a star map. For those unfamiliar with theoretical quantum disintegration, the Void Cascade began when researchers at the Empirical Truth Institute attempted to observe quark behavior at sub-Planck scales. Their experiment created a cascading failure in local quantum fields that began systematically unraveling reality itself. Zooms in on expanding darkness. The phenomenon expanded at a geometric rate, converting ordinary matter into a state that our leading physicists described, with disturbing informality, as just super not there anymore. 17 containment strategies failed. 3 inhabited systems were evacuated before being consumed. Mathematical models predicted total galactic dissolution within 87 standard days. Shows footage of emergency council session. In desperation, the Galactic Council invoked Emergency Protocol Omega-12, which permitted consulting species normally considered too dangerous for advanced scientific collaboration. The humans were contacted. Displays human scientific team arriving at research station. The human response team was led by Dr. Layla Patel, a quantum physicist who had previously been denied research permits 14 times due to what review boards called cavalier experimental methodologies, and what humans called thinking outside the box. Shows Dr. Patel examining data. Dr. Patel requested complete data on the Void Cascade, which several security councils initially refused to provide on the grounds that humans might weaponize quantum disintegration. This objection became moot when the cascade consumed its 4th star system, at which point Dr. Patel was granted full access. Footage of Patel and team reviewing information, after just 6 hours, a time frame so abbreviated that 3 different species filed formal protests, questioning the seriousness of the human approach. Dr. Patel announced she had a potential solution. Her proposal was so outlandish that initial translations were assumed to be in error. Shows Patel presenting to horrified alien scientists. Dr. Patel suggested, with disturbing confidence, that they could patch reality by causing an even bigger problem right next to the first problem, so they cancel each other out. When asked to elaborate on the scientific principle behind this approach, she referenced a human entertainment called cartoons and something about coyotes and roadrunners. Deep sigh from Professor. Despite vigorous objections from every rational being present, the expanding void cascade left few alternatives. Patel was authorized to implement her solution, which involved creating a second carefully calibrated quantum disruption that she claimed would counter-harmonize with the first. Shows footage of massive apparatus being constructed, using technology cobbled together from parts of 17 different scientific disciplines, some of which should not have been compatible. The human team created what they informally named the reality reboot button. The device violated 63 separate safety protocols, and was powered in part by what appeared to be a modified beverage dispenser. Footage of tense countdown. When activated, the device created a second quantum disruption that, against all known laws of physics, did indeed begin to interact with the void cascade. The resulting phenomenon can only be described as reality having an argument with itself. Shows spectacular visual display of energies colliding. The competing quantum disruptions created a recursive feedback loop that, instead of destroying everything as any sensible scientific model would predict, resulted in mutual annihilation of both anomalies. The void cascade was neutralized. Reality remained intact, albeit with some localized adjustments to the constants of physics that 17 research teams are still documenting. Turns off display. When asked to explain how she had conceived such an improbable solution, Dr. Patel said she was inspired by something called noise-canceling headphones, and that time I fixed my washing machine by kicking it. The official scientific paper documenting the procedure has become the most cited and least understood publication in galactic history. Adjusts teaching robes thoughtfully. This incident forced a reluctant reassessment of humanity's role in galactic affairs. While still classified as catastrophically unpredictable, humans are now officially recognized as occasionally useful when conventional approaches have been exhausted and existence itself is at stake. Activates final display. This brings us to our conclusion, and the most troubling question facing xenosociologists today. Are humans dangerous because they're inherently chaotic, or are they effective because they're dangerous? The Galactic Council remains divided on this philosophical quandary. Professor Krulik straightens his teaching robes and addresses the class with newfound solemnity. We now arrive at the most crucial portion of this lecture, the practical application of your newfound knowledge regarding humanity, or as I prefer to frame it, survival strategies for a galaxy containing humans. Activates final holographic display showing safety protocols. The Galactic Council has officially classified humanity as paradoxically beneficial hazards, a designation previously reserved exclusively for controlled black holes used in power generation. Humans are the only sentient species to hold this classification, which mandates both cautious containment and strategic utilization. Display shows statistical models. Current models predict a 78% probability that humans will accidentally solve one of the 5 great crises facing galactic civilization within the next century. These same models assign a 83% chance that humans will inadvertently cause at least 3 new crises of comparable magnitude during the same time frame. Sardonic chuckle. In other words, they create problems at approximately the same rate they solve them, resulting in a form of chaotic equilibrium that statistical models find deeply offensive. Changes display to show official protocols based on extensive research, much of it conducted by this department and several therapy collectives. I present the official guidelines for interacting with humans, as approved by the Galactic Council's Committee for Exceptionally Problematic Species. Clears throat dramatically. Guideline 1. Never ask a human if something is possible. Their understanding of this concept differs fundamentally from rational species. To humans, impossible translates roughly as has not been attempted with sufficient determination yet. Several students take frantic notes. Guideline 2. If you must include humans in complex operations, assign them to problems previously deemed unsolvable. Their inability to recognize impossibility occasionally yields results, and it keeps them distracted from functional systems they might improve. Adjust display. Guideline 3. Never, under any circumstances, tell a human that something is forbidden without providing a clear logical reason that appeals to their bizarre empathies concept. Studies show that rules presented without explanation are interpreted by humans as personal challenges rather than safety measures. Troubled murmurs from class. Guideline 4. If a human says they have a bad feeling about something, evacuate immediately. Through mechanisms still not understood by xenobiology, humans occasionally display precognitive capabilities, specifically related to impending disasters, particularly ones they are about to cause. Advances to next guideline, Guideline 5. Always provide humans with what they call snacks. Humans deprived of regular caloric intake become statistically more unpredictable, a phenomenon they call being hangry, a linguistic fusion of hungry and angry that no translator can properly convey the full implications of. Changes display again. Guideline 6. If you witness humans engaging in behavior that appears suicidally dangerous, do not intervene immediately. Perform scans to determine if they are conducting scientific research, b. attempting to impress potential mates, or c. participating in what they call extreme sports. In cases B and C, intervention may result in social offense. In case A, intervention may prevent a Nobel Prize. Several students emit confusion pheromones. Yes, I realize the contradictory nature of these guidelines. Reminder that this is precisely why humans are classified as they are. Displays final safety protocol. And finally, Guideline 7, perhaps the most important. If faced with a truly insurmountable crisis where all conventional approaches have failed, consider consulting humans, but only after updating your existential affairs. Their solutions, while often effective, tend to modify the original problem in ways no one could have anticipated. Turns off display. To conclude this lecture, I wish to share a personal anecdote that exemplifies everything we've discussed today. Professor's tone becomes slightly less formal. 3 standard cycles ago, I attended an interspecies cultural exchange on the human colony world of New Anchorage. During a routine geological survey, a previously dormant supervolcano began showing signs of imminent eruption. Evacuation protocols were initiated, but calculations indicated only 43% of the population could be transported to safety before catastrophic event. Thoughtful pause. The human governor, upon receiving this information, asked a question so absurd that my translator initially refused to process it. Once properly parsed, she had asked, "What if we just let some of the pressure out early?" Incredulous clicks from students. Yes, her suggestion was essentially to perform elective surgery on a supervolcano. More astoundingly, their geological team had already begun drilling relief vents before formal approval was granted, based on what they called a hunch that it would work. Resigned gesture. Against all statistical probability and geological precedent, their primitive intervention succeeded. The pressure was released through controlled channels, resulting in impressive but non-catastrophic geothermal displays that the humans immediately began advertising as tourist attractions. Professor shakes head in disbelief. When I expressed my amazement at their solution, the governor looked genuinely confused and said something I believe perfectly encapsulates humanity's place in our galactic community. She said, "Sometimes the best way to avoid a disaster is to create a smaller, more manageable disaster on your own terms." Deep, philosophical tone. And there, students, lies the fundamental paradox of humanity. They are walking disasters who occasionally prevent greater disasters through the controlled application of their inherent chaotic nature. Professor straightens posture, returning to formal lecture mode. As you depart this classroom and continue your xenological studies, remember this fundamental truth. The galaxy was more predictable before humanity achieved faster than light travel, but it was also perhaps more vulnerable to the truly existential threats that lurk between the stars. Humanity represents both a phenomenal liability and an invaluable insurance policy against the unknown. Begins gathering teaching materials. Your final assignment is to compose a response to the following question. Given humanity's demonstrated pattern of creating and solving problems of similar magnitude, would the galaxy be safer if humans were confined to their home system, or are we collectively safer with them distributed throughout council space as chaotic problem-solving elements? Wry tone. I expect logical arguments supporting either position, though I will note that every previous class that has selected confinement has subsequently changed their position when presented with the statistical models of extinction-level events. The required minimum perspective shifts for cultural empathy credit remains 3. Final announcement. For those planning xenological field studies involving humans, mandatory insurance forms and next-of-kin notifications are available outside my office. Chemical mood stabilizers will be provided at no charge. Class dismissed. Soft afterthought. And remember, if you do encounter humans during your academic career or subsequent professional life, always maintain a safe distance, never show fear, and if they offer you something called coffee, politely but firmly decline. We lost an entire xenobiology department last cycle to what humans casually referred to as a caffeine-fueled brainstorming session. The structural repairs to the research facility are still ongoing. Recording ends.